I should have never used sausages as bait. The old man at the dock warned me, begged me not to, but I didn't listen. When I felt that pull on my line, I knew immediately something was wrong. What came up from those dark waters had too many eyes, too many fingers reaching for me. The locals surrounded my boat, screaming that I had to return it, but it was already too late. I had awakened something that should have stayed buried beneath the lake. Now, 3 weeks later, I can still feel it calling. To me. If you want to hear what happened at Lago Oscuro, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop in the comments where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see every body of water for the rest of your life. I should have listened to old Miguel when he gripped my arm outside the bait shop that morning, his weathered fingers digging into my flesh with unexpected strength. "No sausages," he hissed, his breath reeking of tobacco and desperation. "Never sausages in these waters." I laughed it off naturally. I'd been fishing for 20 years across 3 continents, and some superstitious local wasn't going to tell me what bait to use. Besides, I'd run out of everything else. The shop had sold me their last pack of chorizo links after I'd arrived too late to get proper bait. Tournament-grade lures, live minnows, even the artificial stuff, all gone. The annual festival had cleaned them out. "It's just processed meat, old man," I said, pulling my arm free. "Fish don't care about our customs." His eyes went wide, pupils dilating like he'd seen something terrible behind me. "Fish? You think fish is what you need to worry about?" He leaned closer, and I caught the tremor in his voice. "There are things in Lago Oscuro that remember, things that hunger for what comes from the land, from our world. The sausages, they call to it." I nodded politely and walked away, his muttered prayers following me down the dusty street. That was my first mistake. The lake sat like a dark mirror among the mountains, its surface so still it seemed painted on the landscape. Lago Oscuro, Dark Lake, had been my destination for months. I'd heard rumors in fishing forums, whispered stories about monster catches, about fish that defied classification. As a marine biology consultant and amateur cryptozoologist, I couldn't resist. My YouTube channel needed content, and mystery always drove views. I rowed out to the center as dawn broke, the mist rising off the water in ghostly curtains. My GoPro was already recording, mounted on my cap. The silence was absolute. No birds, no insects, not even the lap of water against my boat, just my breathing and the creak of oars. "All right, folks," I said to the camera, forcing my usual upbeat tone. "Day 1 at Lago Oscuro. The locals are interesting, very superstitious about their fishing practices, but we're going to see if these legendary catches are real or just tall tales." I baited my hook with a chunk of chorizo, the spiced meat leaving greasy residue on my fingers. The moment it hit the water, something changed. The stillness shattered. Ripples spread from where the sausage had entered, but they moved wrong, concentric circles that pulsed with too much regularity, like a heartbeat. Beneath the surface, I saw movement, not the quick dart of a fish, but something slower, more deliberate, something large displacing water as it rose from the depths. My line went taut. "Holy!" I grabbed the rod, feeling the weight on the other end. This wasn't the strike of a bass or even a big catfish. This was pressure, constant and increasing, like I'd hooked a submerged car that had decided to drive away. The drag screamed as line peeled off my reel. I braced my feet and pulled back, every muscle in my arms burning. Whatever I'd caught was heading for deeper water, and it was strong, impossibly strong. "This is insane," I shouted, partly for the camera, partly from genuine shock. "I've never felt anything like this." For 20 minutes I fought it, gaining a few feet of line only to lose 10 more. Sweat poured down my face despite the cool morning air. My hands cramped around the rod grip. The boat spun slowly as the creature circled, and I caught glimpses of something moving below. a shadow too long to be any fish I knew, undulating through the dark water like a ribbon of muscle. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the resistance changed. The creature was rising. The water bulged upward, and I saw it clearly for the first time. It was elongated, just as the title would later say, but that clinical description didn't capture the wrongness of it. The body stretched at least 15 feet, sinuous and eel-like, but covered in scales that shifted color, black, then green, then an oily purple that hurt to look at. The head broke the surface, and I understood why Miguel had been so afraid. It had too many eyes, not fish eyes either. These were positioned wrong, scattered across its skull, in clusters that blinked independently. The mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth that curved backward, designed to trap rather than tear. But it was the appendages that made my blood freeze, dozens of small, finger-like protrusions along its sides, each one grasping at the air as if testing this foreign element. "What are you?" I whispered. It looked at me, or rather several of its eyes focused on me simultaneously while others scanned the boat, the sky, the shore in the distance. Intelligence moved behind those eyes, ancient alien intelligence. Then I heard the shouting. A boat was speeding toward me from the shore, its motor roaring across the still lake. I could see multiple figures standing in it, waving their arms frantically. Even from a distance, I recognized Miguel's voice, screaming something in Spanish. The creature heard them too. Its head swiveled toward the approaching boat, and a sound emerged from its throat. A low-frequency hum that I felt in my bones more than heard. The water around it began to churn, and those finger-like appendages reached toward my boat. I did the only thing that made sense. I grabbed my knife and cut the line. The creature sank immediately, those eyes never leaving me until the dark. Water swallowed it completely. My hands shook as I collapsed onto the boat's bench, my heart hammering against my ribs. Miguel's boat pulled alongside mine moments later. There were 4 of them, all older men, all wearing expressions of horror and anger. "You caught it," Miguel said, his voice flat with disbelief. "Dios mío, you actually caught la Sierpe Hambrienta." "The what?" "The hungry serpent," translated a younger man, maybe 50, with a scar running down his cheek. "The thing that should not be disturbed, the thing our grandfathers' grandfathers learned to leave alone. I didn't know. You were warned." Miguel's face flushed red. "I told you, no sausages, never sausages." "It's just bait. I don't understand." "The meat from the land," the scarred man interrupted. "Processed, seasoned, transformed by human hands. It calls to La Sierpe because it remembers when it walked on land, when it lived in our world before the waters claimed it. The sausages are a bridge between then and now. They wake its hunger for what it lost." I stared at them, trying to process this. "You're saying that thing used to be terrestrial?" "We're saying," Miguel growled, "that you need to bring it back." "What? It's gone. I cut the—" "No." He pointed to my boat's storage compartment. "You need to bring what you took. Look in your catch bin." With trembling hands, I opened the compartment. Inside, coiled and still dripping, was a section of the creature, about 3 feet of its body, severed cleanly where my hook had embedded. It must have torn itself free when I cut the line, leaving this piece behind. The flesh was still moving. Those finger-like appendages grasped weakly at the air, and the scales continued their color-shifting pattern even separated from the main body. "That's impossible," I breathed. "It should be dead. This should be dead." "La Sierpe does not die as normal things die," the scarred man said quietly. "It regenerates, it adapts, it survives. And now you have part of it, which means it will come looking for what it lost. But more than that," he paused, exchanging glances with the others. "You have awakened its appetite. It will feed tonight. It will take from the village what was taken from it." "I don't understand. I'll throw it back. "Not enough," Miguel cut me off. "You must return it properly. There is a ritual, a way our ancestors learned to appease La Sierpe when it was disturbed. You must perform it at midnight, at the old shrine." On the eastern shore, if you do not—" He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. "And if I refuse, if I just leave—" The four men looked at each other again, and I saw pity in their eyes. "You are marked now," the scarred man said. "It has seen you, smelled you, tasted your intent through the hook's metal. The lake is vast, but La Sierpe's memory is longer. It will find you wherever you go because you carry its flesh. You are connected now, pescador. The only question is whether you choose to sever that connection properly or let it drag you down in its own time." I looked down at the writhing piece of creature in my bin, then back at the dark water where it had disappeared. Somewhere in those depths, something ancient and hungry was healing, reforming, and remembering the man who had pulled it toward the surface. My phone buzzed, a text from my producer asking how the fishing was going, whether I'd gotten good footage for the channel. I had gotten footage all right, footage that would make my career or mark me as a fraud, depending on who watched it. But as I looked at Miguel's frightened, determined face, I realized the footage was the least of my concerns. "Tell me about this ritual," I said finally. And that's when they began to explain what I would have to do when darkness fell, and why the old shrine had been built in the first place, and what other fishermen had caught over the centuries when they'd ignored the warnings about bait. But that was still hours away, and I had no idea that the ritual itself would be only the beginning of my problems with Lago Oscuro and its impossible inhabitant. They made me keep the severed section alive. That was the first true horror of the afternoon. Learning that the ritual required the flesh to remain animated, that I had to keep it in lake water, changing it every hour to maintain the connection between the part and the whole. Miguel provided a large cooler and buckets, showing me how to handle the piece without letting those grasping appendages touch my skin. "Why?" I asked as I watched the thing curl and uncurl in the murky water. "What happens if they touch me?" "They taste," he said simply. "They learn you, make the connection stronger, and La Sierpe does not forget flavors." We'd moved to Miguel's house on the shore, a weathered structure that seemed to lean away from the lake, as if trying to escape its presence. The other men had dispersed to prepare, though what that preparation entailed, they wouldn't say. I'd been given strict instructions. Stay inside, don't look at the lake, and for God's sake, don't film anything until after the ritual was complete. I'd already violated the last rule. My GoPro footage was uploading to my cloud storage via my phone's hotspot. Whatever happened tonight, there would be a record. "Tell me the truth," I said to Miguel as he poured us both coffee in his dim kitchen. "What is that thing really? You can't expect me to believe it's just some undiscovered species." He was quiet for a long time, staring into his cup. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of unwanted knowledge. "My grandfather told me a story. His grandfather told him. Back and back the story goes, to when this was not a lake at all." He paused, sipping the bitter coffee. "There was a village here once, before the water, a prosperous place. But prosperity breeds pride, and pride breeds experiments. There was a man, a scientifico, who believed he could improve nature itself. He took animals and changed them, mixed them, tried to create perfection. Genetic experiments? When was this?" Miguel shrugged. "Generations ago, long before such things were supposed to be possible. But possible or not, he did them. Created things that should not exist. La Sierpe was one of them, a creature meant to be the perfect predator, equally at home on land or in water, able to adapt to any environment, to regenerate from any wound. That's insane. See, and the village paid the price. The creatures escaped, people died, they tried to kill them, burn them, bury them. Nothing worked. So they did the only thing they could. They drowned the valley, diverted the river, let the water rise, trapped the creatures beneath the surface where they could not reach the outside world." I felt cold despite the warm coffee. How many creatures? No one knows. Most died over time, we think. Starved or killed each other. But La Sierpe survived. It always survives. And the villagers who escaped our ancestors. They learned to live with it, learned the rules, learned what kept it satisfied, kept it deep, kept it from remembering too clearly what it was created to do. Which was, Miguel met my eyes, to hunt humans. That was its purpose, Pescador. The Cientifico wanted to create the ultimate hunter of men, something that could track us on land or water, that could never be truly killed. He succeeded too well. The thing in the cooler rippled, and I jumped despite myself. The ritual, I said, my mouth dry. What exactly does it involve? You must go to the shrine at midnight, alone. You will bring the flesh and an offering, your blood, freely given. You will speak the words I will teach you, words that bind the contract between the village and La Sierpe. You will return what you took and promise to honor the old rules. If you do this correctly, if your intent is pure, La Sierpe will accept. It will take back its flesh and leave you unmarked. And if I don't do it correctly? Miguel's silence was answer enough. The hours crawled by. Miguel taught me the words, Spanish mixed with something older, syllables that felt wrong in my mouth. He made me repeat them until I could recite them without hesitation, though I didn't understand half of what I was saying. Promises, apologies, acknowledgments of ancient bargains made in desperation. As sunset approached, Miguel's wife, Rosa, returned home. She took one look at me, crossed herself, and began cooking without a word. The smell of food filled the house, spiced meat, ironically enough, but I couldn't eat. My stomach was a knot of anxiety. You should eat, Rosa said finally, her English heavily accented but clear. You will need strength for what comes. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. The shrine is far, the path is difficult, and La Sierpe, she trailed off, glancing at her husband. What about it? I pressed. It watches the approach, Miguel said quietly. The path to the shrine runs along the water's edge. You will feel its attention, its hunger. The ritual requires you to walk that path without running, without looking directly at the water, without acknowledging what you sense. It is a test of will. Jesus Christ. He cannot help you there, Rosa said, and I couldn't tell if she was joking. Night fell like a curtain, absolute and sudden. Through the window, I could see the lake, and for the first time, I understood what Miguel had meant about not looking at it. The water seemed to move, with a life independent of wind or current, rippling in patterns that suggested something massive circling just below the surface. At 11:30, Miguel handed me a backpack. Inside was the cooler containing the creature's flesh, a ceremonial knife for the blood offering, candles, and a small clay vessel filled with what he called sacred water, lake water that had been blessed by the village priest decades ago. Follow the path with the white stones, he instructed. Do not deviate. Do not. Stop, even if you hear voices, especially if you hear voices. Reach the shrine, perform the ritual exactly as I taught you, and return the same way. Do not run, do not look back. And Pescador, he gripped my shoulder, do not let it touch you. If the creature emerges during the ritual, if it comes close, do not let its flesh contact your skin. Why? What would happen? The connection would become permanent. You would become part of it, and it part of you. There would be no severing the link. And then you would belong to Lago Oscuro forever. The walk began at 11:45. I had 15 minutes to reach the shrine before midnight. The path was narrow, barely wider than my shoulders, cutting through dense vegetation on one side and the lake on the other. Miguel had given me a flashlight, but he'd warned me to use it sparingly. La Sierpe was attracted to light over water. I walked in near total darkness, my feet finding the white stones by feel more than sight. The backpack was heavy, and I could feel movement inside it. The creature's flesh was becoming more agitated the closer we got to the lake's edge. 5 minutes in, I heard the first voice. "Help me!" It came from the water, soft and plaintive, a woman's voice, desperate and afraid. "Please, I'm drowning, help me!" I kept walking, eyes forward, just as Miguel had instructed. The voice wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Just the lake playing tricks, or my imagination, or, "Why won't you help me? I'm right here. Just look at me." My neck muscles ached from the effort of not turning my head. The voice was so close now, right at the water's edge, keeping pace with me. "You're not real," I muttered. "Not real?" The voice changed, became angry. "You're the one who isn't real. You're the dream. We are what's true. We are what endures. Look at us. See what you truly are." More voices joined the first. Men, women, children, all calling from the water, some pleading, some threatening, some simply speaking in that old language. Miguel had taught me words that now seemed to carry terrible meaning. I almost understood. The backpack shifted violently. Something was wrong with the creature's flesh. It was moving too much, pulling toward the water like it wanted to return on its own terms. 10 minutes. The shrine should be close now. That's when I felt it, the presence in the water. La Sierpe itself, swimming parallel to my path, its massive body displacing water in rhythmic waves that lapped at my feet. I could sense its attention, focused and intense, those too many eyes watching my every step. Don't look, don't look, don't look. But I wanted to. God help me. Part of me desperately wanted to turn and see it clearly, to understand what I'd hooked, what I'd disturbed. The scientific part of my brain screamed that this was a discovery that would rewrite everything we knew about biology, evolution, the limits of life itself. The rest of me just screamed. The shrine appeared suddenly, a small stone structure built on an outcropping of rock covered in offerings that had rotted away to nothing, flowers long dead, food turned to slime, and bones. So many bones. I checked my phone, 11:58, 2 minutes. The ritual had to begin exactly at midnight, Miguel had said. Not before, not after. The timing was crucial. I set down the backpack and removed the contents with shaking hands. The cooler, the knife, the candles, the sacred water. I arranged them according to Miguel's instructions, forming a circle with the cooler. At the center. 1 minute. The water behind me churned. La Sierpe was close now, so close I could smell it, an odor of deep water and ancient mud, and something else, something chemical and wrong. 30 seconds. I lit the candles with a lighter, the small flames guttering in a wind that seemed to come from the lake itself. The creature's flesh in the cooler was thrashing now, those appendages reaching up toward the night sky. Midnight. I began to speak the words Miguel had taught me, my voice, cracking on the unfamiliar syllables. With my right hand, I took the ceremonial knife and drew it across my left palm, letting blood drip into the sacred water. The mixture turned dark, and the smell of copper filled the air. Behind me, something massive emerged from the lake. I didn't look. I continued the ritual, speaking faster now, my blood mixing with the water as I poured it over the creature's flesh in the cooler. The thing writhed and twisted, and for a moment I thought it was rejecting the offering. Then I felt breath on the back of my neck, hot, fetid breath that reeked of dead things and deep places. La Sierpe had come onto land, had left the water to watch me complete the ritual. I could hear it breathing, hear the wet sounds as its body shifted behind me, hear those finger appendages scraping on stone as it moved closer. The final words of the ritual stuck in my throat. I couldn't remember them, couldn't think past the primal terror of having that thing inches from my back. Speak. The voice came from behind me, but it wasn't human. It was the sound of water moving through a throat that had learned to shape words. Finish what you began, fisher of forbidden depths. Somehow I found the words, forced them out in a rush of panic and desperate hope. The moment the last syllable left my lips, the creature's flesh in the cooler went still. Then it began to dissolve, turning to water, or into water, streaming out of the container and flowing toward the presence. Behind me, I heard it drinking, absorbing, taking back what had been separated. Then silence. I waited, not daring to move, counting my heartbeats. 100, 200, 500. Finally, I risked a glance over my shoulder. The shore was empty. La Sierpe had returned to the lake, but scratched into the stone of the shrine, in marks that were still fresh and bleeding some kind of luminescent fluid, was a message in English. The bargain is witnessed, the flesh is returned, but the taste remains. We will meet again, fisher who uses meat from the land. Next time, bring yourself. I ran then, forgetting Miguel's warning about not running, about maintaining composure. I sprinted down that path with my flashlight blazing, not caring what I attracted, only desperate to put distance between myself and that shrine. I burst into Miguel's house at 12:47 a.m., gasping and wild-eyed. He took one look at me and nodded slowly. "It is done?" "It's done." "But Miguel, it wrote. There was a message. It said we'd meet again." "Show me your hand," he interrupted. I held up my left palm, where I'd cut it for the blood offering. The wound was already closed, but the scar that remained was wrong. It wasn't just a line, it was a pattern, like scales, faintly iridescent in the lamplight. Miguel's face went pale. "Dios mío, you touched it. The flesh touched you during the ritual." "No, I was careful, I never—" But even as I protested, I remembered. When the cooler had thrashed, when I'd been pouring the bloody water, one of those finger appendages had brushed my cut palm. Just for a second, just for a heartbeat. "What does it mean?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "It means," Rosa said from the doorway, her voice heavy with pity, "that you are marked. Part of it is in you now. Part of you is in it. The bargain is sealed, but not in the way we hoped." Miguel sank into a chair. "You must leave Lago Oscuro. Tomorrow at first light. Go far from here and never return. Perhaps the distance will weaken the connection. Perhaps you can live a normal life if you stay away from deep water, from lakes and oceans, and places where things like La Sierpe might dwell. And if I don't, if I stay, then it will call to you," Rosa said simply. "And eventually, you will answer. You will walk into the lake, and you will not walk out. Not as yourself." I looked at my scarred palm, at the faint iridescence that caught the light. Somewhere in the darkness outside, the lake rippled. And I felt it, a presence at the edge of my consciousness, ancient and patient and hungry. Not a voice exactly, more like a knowing, a certainty that we were connected now, the creature and I. And deep in my chest, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, something responded to that call with recognition, with hunger, with the terrible understanding that part of me wanted to go back to the water, to see what waited in those depths, to discover what I might become if I surrendered to the connection forged in blood and flesh. I left Lago Oscuro the next morning as the sun rose, driving away from that dark mirror of water without looking back. But I could still feel it, can still feel it now, 3 weeks later, thousands of miles away. And sometimes, late at night when I'm alone, I find myself looking at bodies of water, rivers, lakes, even large puddles, with an interest that goes beyond scientific curiosity. I find myself wondering what lives beneath the surface. I find myself remembering the taste of blood mixed with sacred water. I find myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, I should return to Lago Oscuro and finish what I started. But that's a thought for another day, isn't it? Or is it?